So welcome to another video in our economics definition series. So here we'll be taking a look at quite a short chapter, and this is the final chapter in your year one microeconomics. So this should be chapter 4, and this is government intervention. So it's quite a short chapter, and there's not too much you need to understand in terms of definitions here, which you need. There's quite a few graphs, but in terms of definitions, this is all there is. So we'll just get right into it. So in terms of a subsidy, so a subsidy is usually a payment which is made by the government to a producer in order to reduce the cost of production and encourage them to increase production output. So basically, the government comes to a company and says, look, here's a grant, here's a subsidy, I'll give you this money. And as a result of that company having that money, they could buy more equipment, they could make stuff more efficient, they could get more labor, they could do whatever they wanted. But essentially, they can reduce their cost of production. The key thing is that if you reduce these costs of production, and you can therefore increase your production for output, and therefore it's good for the company because they can make more money as a result, or whatever happens there. But the key thing is because the cost of production goes down, they can make more and they reap the benefits of that. Then you have this idea of maximum price and minimum guaranteed price. So maximum price is basically a price ceiling which a firm cannot set their price over, so they can't charge more than the certain amount. So a maximum price is basically good for some consumers, knowing that they won't have to pay above a certain price to get something. So people can't just randomly set their prices really, really high. So an example of this might be during the coronavirus, which is going around. Some people in China, or some firms, they've basically said that the price of masks cannot go above a certain level. Since the demand for masks has gone up so much, what might happen is that producers might say, okay, we're going to increase the price of it quite a lot. But because the government said you can't set your prices above a certain amount, then people know that they might get like a guaranteed amount that they have to pay, or they don't have to worry about it going over that. It should definitely be either that or less than that. So that's essentially what a maximum price is. You might also have maximum prices in some football leagues where you say you can't pay people above a certain wage. So that's just a way of enforcing the price doesn't go out of control. Then you've also got a minimum guaranteed price, which is like a floor price beneath which a firm can't set their price underneath. So this means that someone knows that no matter what happens, they would definitely get this price no matter what. So minimum guaranteed price is that. So what might happen is a company knows that if I'm making wheat, if I know I can guarantee a price of like £10 per kilogram, no matter how bad, the situation gets, or the industry gets, or whatever happens, they know for a fact they're getting £10. So that will make it easier for them to plan their production and do stuff. But yeah, the minimum guaranteed price is just a floor price beneath which you can't set your price under. And obviously maximum price is one where you can't go above. So next we've got tradable pollution permits, and it's quite a long definition, but it's quite an easy one. So if I just read it out, it's a license which allows firms to pollute up to certain amounts, and the amount of these is controlled by the government, and hence they can control the amounts of pollution. Firms may buy and sell these permits between themselves, which means they may wish to pollute less, since they can sell these for extra revenues, and it incentivizes less pollution. The key idea with a tradable pollution permit is basically you have, as a factory, you might have a certain amount of permits which say, okay, you can pollute this much. But what happens is sometimes a factory might not need to pollute as much, or they know that if they don't pollute so much, they can actually sell these permits to another factory, which may need to pollute a bit more, but it can't because it only has so many tradable pollution permits. So you might say, okay, my factory is not polluting so much, so let me sell you our permits so you can pollute more. So what this would mean is that technically the company selling its own permit can make some money, and because it was incentivized not to pollute, and that's why it could sell its permit, then that's kind of how they work. And also the government kind of technically set the overall amounts of pollution which takes place in theory, because even though the other factory wants to pollute more by buying the permit, because the first factory wasn't polluting so much, the overall pollution isn't as much. But that's just all theoretical. In real life, it doesn't really tend to work like that, unfortunately. But yeah, that's what a tradable pollution permit is. So just a permit that lets you decide how much to pollute, and they can be sold. So next we'll take a look at property rights. So property rights are the idea that economic resources can be used and owned by certain individuals, and firms have right over how these resources are used, and the ownership of resources exchanged for economic transactions involving these resources. What it means is basically, in economics, we need to know exactly who owns what. So then who is allowed to make a decision on the ownership of a certain asset or a certain resource. And if you were to sell that resource, then who owns like the benefits of that resource? So if I sold my house, the person who sold the house, who had the property rights of the house, is the one who's entitled to get the money. So it's quite important to understand who owns things in economics, so the right person can get the correct rewards for it. And finally, we'll take a look at what government failure is. So this is probably the easiest one out of all of them. So government failure is where the government intervention leads to a net welfare loss in society. This is basically where the government kind of steps in, it does something, and as a result of doing, whatever they did, what ends up happening is it causes a bigger problem than there already was. So as a result of the government trying to step in to correct like market failure or something like that, they actually cause even more failure, and we give that term, or that term is known as government failure. So that's pretty much all you really need to know for this topic. The overall definitions aren't too bad to understand. So along with this, your year one microeconomics chapter should pretty much be done. So yep, that wasn't too bad. And as always, like if you find these videos helpful, please share them with your friends and people who you think might need help for revision. Or if your teachers aren't great, then you can just use this as a resource, and it just encourages me to make more videos in the future as well. So good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.